Welcome to the Black Hills Small Business Podcast. I'm Tristan Emond with Mindful Living Realty.
And I'm Angelia Dale with Gateway Mortgage. Join us as we sit down with Black Hills small business owners, learn about their businesses, and tell their stories.
We're doing it now on the Black Hills Small Business Podcast. Everybody, welcome back to the Black Hills Small Business Podcast. Today we're with Erica Lane with Erica Lane Photography. Thanks so much for joining us and being with us here today.
Oh, you're most welcome. Thanks for having me. It's exciting.
Awesome.
Never been on a podcast.
There we go. First podcast.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome.
Woo-hoo.
So first question is just more about you, yourself, and your family. Tell us about who you are and your family.
Sure. So my name is Erica Lane, but it's actually Erica Lane Harvey. So Lane is my middle name. So when I put that into my business name, everyone thought it was my maiden name. It's not. Yeah. My maiden name is Johnson. So I've actually been in Rapid City my entire life, born and raised in Chapel Valley. My mom had one of the first houses there.
Oh, wow.
So my family roots are here. Moved away to college to California and then realized I belonged here. So I came back. And then family-wise, my grandfather is actually a pretty well-known person in the community. He's done a lot at POW. So he helped get the Civic Center going, helped with a lot of the flood stuff. When you walk into the theater down at the Civic Center, there's a bust of a gentleman. That's my grandfather.
Well, there we go.
So check it out.
I didn't know we were, in historical accuracy over here. And
Big shoes to fill, let me tell you.
Right.
Big shoes. And I'm just doing dog photos, so,
Well, they're amazing dog photos.
Well, they
Guys, tell us more about your business. What kind of services do you provide?
Yeah, so I've been running a business in Rapid City since 2005 when I was 24 and didn't know anything. Went through the crash. So at that time, I was doing just like commercial photography, video, things like that. And then when the economy crashed, I kind of just did it as a side hustle while I worked other things, right? Like probably everybody else did. And then rebranded the business as you know it today to Erica Lane Photography. And then part of the reason why I used Lane instead of Harvey is basically all a sound. So Erica Harvey Photography just sounds horrible. So that's why I went with my middle name. And started off doing landscape nature. That's one of my biggest passions is promoting and saving the environment. And then I went to a conference in 2018 and one of the photo classes listed was pet photography. And I was like, oh, I had the dog. I do photography. Why have I not thought of this before? And so ever since that class, it like changed the trajectory of my life. I basically, for the last 3 years, up until I opened the studio in September 21, did numerous classes on how to work with animals, how to photograph them, how to look at their behavior and make sure they're not stressed out, all sorts of things before I opened the studio. So
interesting. I suppose there's more to it than here's a dog, click, right?
It is. But, everyone says dogs must be hard, and I'm like, toddlers are hard.
Yeah.
Very true. But I mean, look at these pictures, like, oh, look how well they're sitting. But like sitting, and well, it takes that.
I'll let you know a little secret on this one. These ones are show dogs.
Okay, so they know. They know.
One of my more easy subjects, for sure. The last one, not so much. But the rest of them were all trained show dogs. So made my job a little easier. Not all of my clients come in that well trained.
So is the pet photography kind of your main source of income at this point?
Yeah, I would say 80% of what I do at the studio is pets. I'm really transitioning away from families. So I still get calls, and if they're an existing client, of course I'm going to still photograph them. But if a new client calls, I've kind of got to the point where I talk to them and then I go, so do you have a pet? And they're like, well, why do you ask? And I was like, well, my business has really shifted its purpose, to celebrating and photographing pets. So that's kind of the secret way of getting me to photograph your family for you. And it's actually been working out really well. People find it funny and, we move on. But I, by all means, didn't push away existing clients. I'll still photograph what they need. But I've just, I don't have kids myself. I have a dog. And so I really wanted to create a business and tailor it to those pet parents. They should have a space that they can go to for their passion, which is their dog, not their child. So,
Yeah, because I think, like I said, they're part of the family, and they are. So think about, I need to take a nice photo of my pet to have them up on the wall, because this is the way you've done them. They're not, they could be something I'd have on my wall, I think.
And that's part of the reason I wanted to do it. Like, I've always had pets in my life. We had poodles growing up. We're poodle mixes, and Murphy was like my dog. Like, this poor dog loved me, and I was like 5, and I didn't know how to take care of a dog very well. And my siblings would steal him from me, and so I would hide him in the closet.
The dog?
Yeah, the dog. And so then he grew up thinking that's where he's supposed to sleep. That's pretty sad, but he was such a good dog. And I wish that pet photography was a thing. Like, I don't really have a nice photograph of me and that dog. And he was like my childhood growing up.
Yeah.
Loved him. Lost him in high school. And so, yeah, so I'm really kind of trying to bring that concept to Rapid. It's kind of a new concept. The bigger cities, there's a lot of pet photographers, and that's 100% what they do. It's kind of new to this area.
Do you do pretty much everything in studio, or do you do some on location?
So right now, the main focus is the studio. This summer, I'm slowly kind of getting my toes outdoors. I've done outdoor photography with people numerous times, but the issue with the dogs is they get a lot more distracted. So whereas in the studio, I can really get their attention. I have a lot of hunting calls and little tricks to get them to look at the camera. I've done a few sessions outside right now, but those were mostly for dogs that came in that were nervous of the studio lights. They can be a little frightening to some dogs that are scared of storms, or rescues that have a little bit of a troubled past. It can be kind of traumatic for them. So then we transition outside with no lights. And then I kind of use a longer lens, so I'm not kind of up in their space either, to help them feel more relaxed.
Interesting.
But it's like, because there's one over there that had a really cool outdoor dog.
Yeah. Yeah, that one in particular was used with lights. The dog wasn't fearful or anything, but that's the disc golf course on Jackson. And I drive by it every time I go home, and there's a certain time of year, and it only lasts like 2 or 3 days, where all the dandelions there turn into puffballs. Right. And the sun backlights them.
Oh,
And so I called a friend whose dog is short, because the dandelions fit, and asked if she would want to do this photo with me. Man, it's a good photo, but I missed like the peak of the puffs.
Then I dabble in photography, and there's like that, just that time. It's like, like the morning light or coming. It's like, okay, you have to get it there.
Yeah, that's the other reason I don't do a lot of outside stuff. Our weather here, especially this year, is so temperamental, and having to constantly reschedule stuff for people is hard on me. It's hard on them. Whereas the studio is always like good to go.
Yeah. So what's like the biggest dog you've been able to photograph?
The biggest dog, height-wise, my friend has an Irish Wolfhound.
Oh,
and so I'm not like super tall, like 5'4", right? But tall compared to dogs. And this dog is so tall, like all he did was like lift his head up, and I'm going like, treats?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right at my chest level. I'm just like, oh boy.
Yep.
But weight-wise, I would say probably the biggest dog that I had might have actually been a Saint Bernard poodle.
Oh,
Very big, fluffy dog. I've had a couple Mastiffs in. The bigger dogs, I do enjoy them. They're a lot calmer. The medium-sized dogs tend to have the most crazy energy, my dog included. And then the little dogs always tend to be kind of the ones that have a little bit of an attitude. Yeah, that's like bigger. They have the attitude. I've had 2 German Shepherds that were really young that had some fearful attitude, but just like stranger attitude has been like the little dogs.
So that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, do you see those dogs representing their owners a lot? Because when I see dogs, like, oh, kind of looks like your kind of thing.
I've seen it, but I don't think the myth like really exists. I think you can search for it and find those examples.
Yeah.
But I don't think it quite. I mean, do you think I look like my dog?
Well, no, it's like when I have a chow, we have a lot of hair. And I was like, oh, I could see that. Well, my wrinkly dog kind of looks like my husband.
I do like those articles where I've seen people really dig deep to find some of the people that match their dogs, like the old men that match like old on faces and stuff. Those are pretty good.
Yeah.
Like that'd be a fun like pet project, pun intended.
Well, like I said, it's nice to be able to, do the pictures with your dogs too.
Yeah,
it is that combination.
It's funny. I've been in business now. I've been open for the studio 2 years in September. And I'm actually surprised. I would say only 35% of the people actually have their photo with their dog. It's interesting. Most of the time they just want the dog.
Just the dog, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it resonates back to a lot of us, hate having our photo taken.
Right.
Myself included. as I mentioned, or, before we started recording, I had my photo with the driver's license, DOT. I hate my photo. I didn't even get a chance to retake it.
Right. Yeah.
They say it looks good. Forget.
That's what he said, and I was like, you liar.
A lot of people then also, they just like, you have your kids, you want a picture with just the kids. And so it's kind of the same idea. You want to focus on the animals and not necessarily the whole
Yeah. Yeah. In the realm of dogs, the dogs can't look at the photos, right? So it's not really for them.
Yeah.
But I definitely, when I do photograph families, I'm always pushing for mom to get in the photo because mom hates her photo, right? But the photo's not really for her. It's for the kids later.
Yeah.
And I'm always wanting to remind myself and all moms out there, your kids don't care what you look like. They don't care how old you are, how much gray hair you've gotten. They just want to see their mom smile, and they want to be able to see it for the rest of their life. And that's what the photos are for. And I'm always trying to remind people that. I think women in general in our society, we get beat up so much with expectations of what we're supposed to look like, and so when people come in, I always think they look beautiful. Everyone has unique characteristics that make them you and them. And
They are.
Yeah. And it's so sad for me to think that when people don't like that image of themselves, it's like, I wish there was a way outside of showing them their picture to show them how I see them. Sometimes it does work. Like, I can use my camera and the different lens choices and background and lighting, all those things to help you see how I see you, and
right.
It's really fun when I see people go, I see that, and it's like, well, that's what you look like, in this day and age with cell phones, what's happening is people are getting a distorted view of what they look like. So when you take a selfie, your lens only has one option, and it's wide angle. And so what happens is it stretches out your face, makes your nose bigger. Everything that's closest to the camera is bigger. So everyone thinks their face is longer. And so then when they see their photo, it's almost a shock to them because they're like, well, that's not what it looks like.
The camera or the mirror when I look at it.
And so I think kids these days, even more so, are getting a distorted view of what they look like. So,
but I think it's just like your poses and stuff like that. You're able to capture it with the dogs, or just a little bit more unique up into that. Just head on straight shot. I mean, like the one I'm looking behind you. But
yeah,
like there were so many different options, and it's like a nice that you captured that because it really kind of captures the dog itself and their personality.
Yeah, for me, it's always about storytelling. So my sessions are about an hour. The first 5 minutes is basically the dog sniffing around and checking things out. And I kind of monitor their behavior. It's going to kind of tell me what I can expect from the dog usually in the session, because not every dog's going to give me all these unique poses. Sometimes I'm lucky if I get 3. But it's fun, because I want to tell a story. I want to be able to show the dog in angles that you're not used to seeing, because most of the time, most people are used to looking at their dog straight down. They don't necessarily always get down on the floor with them and see that angle, or the dog's usually looking at them, so they don't get to always necessarily analyze the dog's profile, right, and see the dog that way.
Other than your dog, what's been your favorite dog to photograph?
My muse, also employee of the month.
Yeah, they should have a special place in your heart. Did you have a dog that was your favorite other than yours?
So, man, they all have their positives and negatives. The one that comes to mind right now is a dog recently. It was a Pomeranian. It was a show dog, but the dog got too big, right? Because there's breed standards. And so this lady was able to adopt him. His name was Oscar. And she was just so freaking fluffy. Oh my God. And then he had this habit when he would lay down, he would tuck his feet like this. So he'd look like a little potato. It was so adorable. And he just, Pomeranians have those cute little smash faces, and they always look like they're smiling. And he was just like this much fluff. I mean, it was so freaking adorable. And he was super well behaved. So he was just like always looking around. Big picture of me. Yeah, he's like, Mom. So it was really cute to watch them interact, because she had done a lot of training with him and stuff. So that was a lot of fun. I mean, they're all good dogs. There's never a bad dog. I mean, occasionally I have moments where I'm like, whoa. But I still love them. Dogs are just so fun. They're always just so happy and loving and forgiving. It's just like, how can you not enjoy being in their presence? Like, I'm very fortunate that that's what I get to do.
Yeah, I agree.
And I can take my dog to work.
Yes.
Not all the time, but she doesn't play well with others. She's a little over enthusiastic.
So how long has it been since you've been on a landscape photography shoot? Was that, how long did you sit in Mount Rushmore before you took those pictures?
Oh, yeah, I know. Every year I think about that now. Yeah, I was there all day. I originally was going to get there at noon, but then I kept seeing posts about people were already going up, and I was like, what? They're not for like 12 hours. So I looked at my husband, I said, I got to go have fun. And so I think I left at 9, and I originally was going to drive through Keystone, and then probably was a good thing I didn't. I ended up going the back way, and my original thought was I wanted to be pointed towards Keystone to get out, and I was sitting on top of that first tunnel out of Keystone, and thankfully got there, I think about 10, got a spot. Thankfully I would drive a small car, and I got up to the top of the tunnel, and there was like 5 chairs with ropes around them. And I'm like, that's my spot. Because I had staked it out like 2 days before. And there was a dad and his daughter that had slept there all night because they had a family of 10 coming. And that's why they roped off the chairs. Nice. It was hilarious. And that poor guy, apparently whatever kid last used the tent didn't put all the supplies back in. So they couldn't really use it as a tent. He had to like tie parts of the tent to the tree.
I can say somebody who's slept there.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Because like I said, got there at 10, and I was shocked. I was the only photographer at that location. I thought for sure I would have.
You.
Yeah. I mean,
Because in there, yeah.
I went up like the Wednesday before because it was a Friday, and I scoped out every possible spot in Mount Rushmore to go, okay, this is plan A, this is plan B. I had like multiple backups.
Right. And you don't want to be so close. You want to be far enough away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like a gift that was handed to me because there was no other photographers there. On top of that tunnel was blocked by the giant hill. So I had no wind, but everybody else had wind that day. And other than having to sit on a rock in 99 heat for 10 plus hours, like all I did was sit with this umbrella, and I just slowly moved it with the sun, so no clouds. And I was surrounded by a whole bunch of really crazy people. It was worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the shots were pretty amazing.
You'd be like in the lab and sit out there forever.
Yeah, that's probably one of my favorite things I've ever done. I mean, I understand from an environmental aspect that, fireworks are bad for the environment, but I knew that they were probably never going to happen again.
Yeah.
And the last time I'd photographed them was on slide film. So I was like, I have to go with my new camera and do this thing. And yeah, so we added it to the book that I had made, and it was supposed to, it's 51 stories instead of 50 because it was just so many crazy things happened that day.
Right. Yep.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
So talk to us about your book. I remember you publishing that.
Yeah. So when the world shut down and we had nothing to do, I've had a book idea for quite a couple of years leading up to that point. And it came from people would come to my art booth and keep asking me to repeat all these stories of things that had happened to me. And so I originally was just going to make a photo book because it's every photographer's dream to have a photo book. And then I started thinking, well, maybe it's not the photos really that people want. It's stories. And so I talked to my friend. I was like, let's do a storybook, and talk about all this stuff. And so she had a full-time job, right? So it's kind of hard to find time to make a book. Well, unfortunately for her and fortunately for me, she got furloughed and then let go. So she lost her job during the pandemic. And so I basically commandeered her free time to design this book for me because everyone thinks I wrote the stories. And I mean, I kind of did, but honestly, I wrote horrible stories because I talk better. I'm a storyteller. So you would think that would transfer to paper.
Not always.
It does not. Does not. But my friend, we've been friends since high school. So she was able to read those stories and rewrite it. But she wrote it in my tone. Like nobody knows she wrote the book.
Yep.
Even though her name's on the cover, they still don't know she wrote the book because she did it so well.
Yep.
And then, of course, the stories that she partook in, they all of a sudden ended up 2 sprints longer because she added the story. She's like, I think you forgot some important things.
Well, that's a nice collaboration, though.
Yeah, I mean,
Nice.
creating that book is probably right now the thing in my life that I'm most proud of. We ran a Kickstarter. We had no money to do it. We spent 30 days going on Facebook, doing lives, posting, calling people. I mean, it was just crazy. And we ended up raising $26,000 in pre-sales to publish this book. And yeah, it's like super fun. Everyone's like waiting for the next one. And I'm like, well, I need more stories because I've been too busy photographing dogs. And I can't.
There you go.
They are, but I don't think my clients would appreciate if I talked about some of the things that happen.
You're talking about dogs. I can.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm definitely building up some stories for another book. It's just going to take a little bit longer because I have been doing some stuff, just more travel related. So I was in South America in March. That's probably the last time I've done landscape work. And then that trip itself was actually supposed to happen March 2020. Took me 3 years to go on that trip.
Yeah.
Because I was supposed to go to Antarctica last. That's what a normal person does, is Antarctica is your 7th continent. Well, I went to Antarctica before South America. So, but yeah, I just love traveling in nature. I mean, it really is my first passion. I'm hoping that the images that I create will inspire people to want to save the planet or get out and travel, because I'm finding as I get older and understanding a little bit more that it takes a connection to something and it having real, actually face to face, eye to eye, to inspire someone to want to save something. If they just read about it or see it on TV, it doesn't work. And so I'm hoping through my photography to inspire people to travel, see the world, and realize
what you start seeing other people, other places, other cultures, it makes you feel considerably smaller in where we're at, and understand that there's more to this life than just
And there's the world itself to sight, south of China and pearl nose. I never see that. I've not to look that up.
Okay.
Yeah. I just saw, I think I'm the same way. It's like, I want to travel because I want to explore and see what we have available out there for you, along with saving our planet.
We've only got one, and it's hard. I can understand both sides of the coin on why things the way they are and what we need to do to make it better. But the thing that I don't like is that corporations are really the ones causing a lot of the issues, but somehow we need to save it, not them. It's like, no, I think you need to change your business practices.
So you mentioned classes. What kind of classes do you teach?
So I have a class coming up in October. It's teaching people how to shoot on manual. So teaching them what their aperture, their f-stop, and their shutter speed is. You sure could. It's just go to ericalanephotography.com.
later.
Like, here. I just did a class in May on how to see like a photographer. So pre-pandemic, I was offering these classes every year. So this year's the first time I've offered them since the pandemic started. And it's just to help people who want to improve their hobby, and understand why sometimes they get a good photo and why sometimes they suck. Because, people don't have a concept of what those features do. They aren't just about creating a balanced exposure. Each one of those settings has the ability to create a mood or a feeling. And so you can use all those to your advantage. So it's kind of talking about that with people. And then to me, that's second to being a good photographer. So the class that I taught in May, which is about seeing like a photographer, is actually the most important one. Because even if you can take a perfectly exposed, technically excellent photo, if you aren't seeing artistically, it's going to be a snapshot. Yeah. You're not telling a story or creating an emotion. Right. So I do those a couple times. It's been hard. I keep picking up all these hobbies. Like I talked about, I was going to start doing a podcast. I have this book that I'm really bad at promoting. I'm kind of like ADHD a little bit, even though I'm not probably diagnosed with it. I'm just like, ooh, shiny.
Yeah.
What's this? This sounds fun. And like my garden, which is why I was late,
It's okay. Keeps your life active.
Yep, exactly right.
Yep.
Right.
It's active.
Let's back up a little bit and talk about your story. Why did you decide to become a photographer? What happened there?
I don't know if it was something I really even decided. My mom was very artistic. So growing up, we were always doing arts and crafts, painting, drawing. I think I had my first camera when I was like in 2nd grade. It was not anything fancy, it looked like a little spy camera where you put in a really tiny film and then you had the little strobe that you put on the top. It was pretty cool. Yep. I felt special. But like that was my first camera. And then when I was 8, my dad's dad passed away when I was pretty young. And so my mom inherited his camera, and he had a Canon A1 program, which is kind of a professional camera at that time. He had tons of lenses, like he had a 400 millimeter Vivitar lens, like all this stuff. And so my mom just was like, I don't know what to do with any of this. And so like the classes I teach, she went to community ed to learn how to use this camera. And so she'd come home, and when you're 8, you're a lost puppy, right? I'm like, Mom's home. And I'd watch her. I think, I don't have exactly the best memory of what happened. I just remember vaguely that was going on. And somehow I knew how to use the camera. She never taught me how to use it. I just figured out how to use it.
Yep.
And so I was using an SLR on manual at 8 years old. And I actually won a photo contest at our school that year. My grandparents had a cabin in the hills, and we'd feed the deer. You're not supposed to, but we'd feed the deer. And there was a little alcove between the garage and the house that I'd go sit outside with my camera and the tripod and cover up with a blanket. And I'd take pictures of the deer at like 8 years old. So much fun. So much fun. My first and only blind, because I don't do that now. So that was what the photo was from. And then I just took pictures. My mom was super supportive. It was film. So it was like 36 rolls, and I'm pretty sure none of them turned out. But she would go take them to get developed, right? And it was like magic. And then when I got to high school, they don't allow freshmen to do photography. So the first year you had to just do like general art. So that's what I did, and just waiting. And then next year I was able to do photography with Mr. Ferran. Probably seen him. He does a lot of the airbrush stuff up at the Sturgis Rally, and then carves the pumpkins.
David, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he was my freshman, my sophomore photography teacher. He's the one that kind of got it all started. And from there, it was Mrs. Byers the last 2 years. So I did photography every year. I mean, the janitors knew me. I just basically would stay in the darkroom until they kicked me out. That's all I did. The only reason I even went to school functions because I needed to take a photo either for yearbook or for the newspaper.
Yep.
And so it was like, all I did is all I knew how to do. And of course, it's now your senior year, and you're supposed to pick a trajectory of your life. And I was like, well, I like photography, so I guess I'll do that. And so my teacher at the time, Mrs. Byers, was like, well, these are the two best schools. And it was either Brooks Institute out in California or the beaches, or RIT over in New York where there's more snow. So you can guess which direction it went. Went to California at 18 to go to photo school. I have a bachelor's in visual art, so I was actually going to, or visual storytelling. I was going to work at a newspaper. But that was in like 2020 when newspapers kind of started to crash. And so when I graduated, I couldn't actually get a job at a newspaper, unfortunately. So I never got to actually do it, even though that's what I wanted to do. My whole intention with photography was to change the world and have an impact and, leave a legacy to make things better. And the newspaper thing didn't pan out. So then I do what I would call turn to the dark side, which is commercial advertising. And I worked at Robert Sharp and Associates doing a lot of video, but then I also did photography for them. And then I worked for them year and a half, 2005. I left at age 24, I think it's 24. I'd started my own business and knew nothing. So I guess we'll be coming up on 2 more years. I'll be doing a photography business in the Black Hills in some shape or form.
Nice.
It's all I know how to do. Literally, my whole photography.
Well, at least you belonged your passion and went after it.
I know, that's what everyone says.
Decided to be a dance instructor or something instead, or
Yeah, it's funny, talking to my husband, and there's nothing wrong with this by any means, but for me, it's normal. It's like, how do you not have, it's like not everybody has that deep desire of like, this is what I must do,
right?
And there's nothing wrong with that. If you've ever seen the movie Soul that came out, I think during the pandemic, that movie just hit hard. I was like, what do you mean this isn't my life purpose? You just ruined it.
Different for everybody.
It is. So that was actually a really cool movie to watch because it helped me, because that's my normal, right? So it helped me understand a little bit that it's okay just to garden and live life. Not everything has to have this grandiose meaning. Sometimes it's the little things that actually lead the most impact.
Right.
So
what do you love about doing business in Rapid City?
I would say the biggest thing for me about Rapid, and Well, I should preface that when I graduated high school, I mentioned I moved to California. I'm not going to lie. I, for lack of better terms, wanted to get the hell out of Dodge.
Yep.
I was like, there was nothing here. There's crap. I don't want to be here. And I had no intention of ever coming. And I lived in California for 3 years. And believe it or not, one of the actions that solidified me coming home was the fact that I would go for a walk on the beach in the morning and I would say hi to someone and they would avoid all eye contact like I was the plague. And I was just like,
On what? Yeah.
What?
What? Yeah.
I'm like, I couldn't wrap my head around it. And it was just weird. And every relationship I felt that I made there was fake. The only people I still communicate with from college were from Wyoming, North Dakota, and India.
Our Midwest it is, because if you go someplace else, and you're like, the eye contact is there. And I think that's what is nice about our community. You say hi to everybody else, they pass.
And they're supportive, you know. It's like, I'm a member of the Rushmore chapter of E&I in town. I've been a member since 2015. And that really helped me understand how supportive our community is with businesses. And it's just about supporting the community. We're a lot more of a collectivistic culture here than you find in the bigger cities. And it's about helping our community grow, helping people grow. And when people are in trouble, helping them. Like, that's just embedded in our values here. And I really appreciate that, even though I may not necessarily align with everything. It's really hard to, but the people here are just so nice. And I enjoy that even if we do see things differently, we can still have a normal conversation and still be friends, you know, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Hence the podcast. Yeah, it's a lot of why we're doing what we're doing is because Rapid City is such a small business town that I wanted to be able to let everybody know everybody else's stories, that you can then say, hey, I remember you talking about this. That was really cool. By the way, I want to do some business with you. Because you want to do business with people that you really, really enjoy. And that's a whole big, the reason I've kind of started this was one of the reasons. And hopefully we'll continue to grow.
Yeah, I was really excited when you posted about it, obviously, because I was like, oh, this was a great idea. You know, there's so many great businesses that people don't even know about.
Right.
So, I mean, that's part of the reason why B&I is nice, because it allows you to meet people that I probably never would have met before. You know, it's always great to step out and do different things and try new things. And
right.
It's nice that the podcast stuff's finally picking up here, because I love
it. We're only 10 years down.
I know, reason.
I thought about it before. It doesn't help.
We're all so busy.
We're all saying hi to everybody.
But what you talked about, you know, aligns similar to what I was talking about with the nature, right? It's making those stories, talking to people, seeing the people and hearing their voice and make eye contact. It's all the same thing. It's making that connection,
right,
which is so important.
Well, I think you're going to reach out to people that you kind of trust or you have that connection with on that side. So, like, if you're sitting down and you're really learning that story, like the one we did with the olive place, and, you know, she was very moved, and that one kind of got us, because it's like, oh, you know, her heart and soul went into that business. Not that that does it with everybody else, but, you know, you definitely saw it in the deal that we did, the podcast that we did.
We did one on the Black Hills Tire. You know, my comment to them was, you know, when I go over there, he says, hi, Tristan, how are you? And there's that personal connection there. And I want that as a Midwesterner, I guess. You know, I'll take my stuff there all the day versus XYZ over here. Yeah. You know, so that's what this is all about.
Yeah.
Yep. Service is so important. So important.
Especially here. I mean, there's a lot of different places where it doesn't matter as much. And I can see that even in my business, you know, where, you know, it's just, it doesn't really matter.
Oh, I know. I talk about this with people so much. It's like the airlines can treat you like a cow, like cattle, but you still have to keep using their business. But if I was to treat my clients that way, I'd be out of business. I think it's so unfair that these large corporations can treat their customers like crap. Yet, you know, if I do that, it's so strange to me. And yet people still keep supporting these two. Yeah. So it's sad. But I love hearing people's passions. One of the main reasons I started doing the pet photography after I'd, you know, been to that convention had to do with kind of my heart dog. So Mabel is actually my second dog. The dog that you saw on the sign when he came in, the little white poodle, that's Peanut. She's my heart dog. She was a special needs dog that I had for 14 and a half years. That was basically like taking care of a toddler. So when you get a dog like that at age 24, they become your child. And she had almost died a total of like 7 times in her 14 years. And about the 3rd time that it happened, I specifically remember driving in the middle of the night down in Colorado because she was so small I couldn't work on her here when she had these, what I'm just going to call, for lack of a better term, episodes. And I was crying, and it occurred to me, oh my God, I love this dog with everything in my heart, and I don't even have a portrait of her and I together. I'm like, what happened is she doesn't come home. And that thought just ripped me apart. And so when I got into self-service range, because obviously rapid to Denver, you miss out on some of that, I called up my friend Kevin, and he's actually the photographer that I'm next to. And I think I was probably crying. Kevin, send me back. All this stuff. He's like, what? I'm like, I need a portrait session as soon as I get back. And he's like, okay, everything will be fine. I'm like, okay. And of course, my dog made it back. And the thing that I remember about that session and what really hit home to me, it's not just about photos. It's actually about the experience and the memories that tie to those photos. So the pictures of her that he took are beautiful. They sit in my office, but when I look at those photos, I don't just see the picture. I see her happy and running around his studio. You know, I see us playing and doing, I mean, I have so much memory. Yeah, like they're so clear as day, and it was 10 years ago still. And so that's what I try to offer my clients too. It's not just a photo. It's, I mean, for lack of better saying, I stop time. Like, that's the service that I provide people, is to freeze time.
Chances are your dog isn't going to be with you forever.
Yep.
So to have that snapshot of a memory of a time and place keeps them with you forever.
But it's usually that always a happy memory with that. When you see that photo, oh, yep, and you can remember that too. So, yep. Yeah. Yes, I know everyone in the Dane podcast. I know is a business, but
I know.
So we're gonna bring done in and with your class.
And I don't want people to think that I'm like anti cell phones. Like, I take so many cell phone pictures of my dog. The difference is that you're not the one taking the photo, right? You're part of the memory instead of capturing the memory, right? Because there's so many pictures of your mom, right? They're not, because she's always the one taking the photos. And so it's nice to be in the photos, or at least be a participant. And my camera will do a much better job with the studio lights of actually lighting your dog's eyes and see a little bit more about.
Oh yeah, well,
because the cell phones can't do that. Yeah, that's the biggest thing.
Like I said, just the mood on the difference between the different dogs and how you capture like their personalities between the bulldog and their sharp.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
Yeah, I don't know. So, you know, with kids, you're going to photograph them a lot more, right? Toddlers, they're growing all the time. Dogs, it's not something that you would do necessarily all the time, but it's something that I recommend if you think about it, you know, first when you get the dog, because they grow up so fast. I mean, they grow up faster than toddlers, and it's hard to remember, oh, they used to be that small and cute. Now you're like 180 pounds. So it's nice to capture that. And really the best time to do it is about 6-7 years old. After that, depending on what breed and size of the dog, that's when you're going to start to see effects of aging.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, photos like that can be difficult. I know when Peanut was on her last year, I always took a Christmas photo for, I think in the 14 years I missed 2. And her last one, even though it's been now almost 3 years, is still painful to look at because I see that aging. It brings back that pain of losing them versus the joy of having them. And so a lot of
take the picture with the joy time, not the
and it's
downtime.
And so it's hard. A lot of times when people think to take them, it's later in life, and that's when it brings back those painful memories. I'd rather people remember the good things.
Right.
That's a good, So like that 6 to 7 year old, you're saying.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Like when they're a puppy.
Yeah.
You know, that's about like, in my mind, if you're going to pick 2 times to photograph your dog at a professional setting, those would be it for you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Erica, again on this Black Hills Small Business Podcast. And we'll see you guys next time.
I hope you enjoyed that story as much as we did.
We'll put all the contact information of every business in the show notes or the description below. Be sure to check them out and support our local small businesses.